Hello and welcome to You Sew You. This is my channel all about all the crafty bits and pieces I get up to. I knit, I sew, I crochet, I spin on a drop spindle, I'm learning to weave, and there are various other bits and pieces that I dabble in from time to time. And this is my series of short videos all about spinning on a drop spindle. So welcome back to Basic Spindle Spinning from You Sew You. This time round we're looking at creating a 2-ply but using a slightly different method to the one that we used in my previous plying video. The end result is going to be pretty much the same, but it's just a different methodology to it. We're going to be looking at the Andean Plying Bracelet technique. I've no idea if that originates from the Andes or whether that's just what we call it. I need to do a little bit more research on terminology to be able to sort of verify that, but throughout the spinning community this method is known as Andean plying or Andean Plying Bracelet. All you need is your spindle with one single on it. I have on here 100 grams of merino bamboo in the St Osgith colourway from Freya Jones Fibercraft in Stoke Mandeville. You'll hear me talk about Freya Jones quite a lot, not because I'm sponsored by her, but because that's my local spinning and weaving shop. So it's all spun up, it's a little bit thick and thin in places, but not too bad, it's relatively consistent, so I'm quite pleased with that. But the 2-ply technique does even out inconsistencies as you go. Now, the Andean Plying Bracelet, you only need one single, whereas the method we used before, we were spinning off 2 bobbins or toilet rolls or knitting needles, or you could use a ball if you really wanted to, or a cake. It's just easier if it's round around something to stop it getting tangled. But we needed 2 singles. This method you only need one. So if you've spun up all of your fibre on one spindle, or if you have maybe a 50-gram bundle that you wanted to spin up, rather than splitting that into 2 25 grams and plying from there, you can use this method. So all you need is your single and your hand. So you're going to hold your spindle in one hand and you're going to use the other hand to create the plying bracelet. It doesn't matter which one you use, so go with what feels more comfortable for you. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the top of my single off of my hook. I've wrapped it around a few extra times whilst I put it down to rest before plying, just because that's what I do. I feel that it sort of holds it a little bit easier and I don't have to deal with the knot to stop it sort of untwisting whilst it's waiting. So now that I've got my single, you can see it's relatively thin. I'm hoping to get a sort of fingering to support possibly DK weight out of this. I'm going to wrap this around my thumb. If you see Grace of Bubbles Travelling Yarns doing Andean Plying Bracelet, she tends to put a hairband or a wristband or something on and tuck the end in there. Both methods are fine. So we're going to take our spindle in the other hand and we're going to spread our fingers out. We're going to take it up around the middle finger and back around the thumb, around the back of the hand, up across the finger, back around the pinky, and back around the back of the hand. You're always going to do it in that way. So from the thumb to the middle finger, back to the thumb, making sure you're going around the middle finger in the same direction each time you come from the thumb. Around the back of the hand, up across the middle finger, the same way you did the last time you came from the pinky, back around the pinky, across the back of the hand. So I'll just move slightly closer to the lens so you can see that a bit more closely. Be careful that you are not wrapping too tightly. You want to still be able to feel your fingers. Don't cut off the circulation in them. Plus you're going to need to get your middle finger out later on, so you don't want it too tight. So I'm going to go from the thumb, up around the middle finger, back around the thumb, around the back of my hand, around the pinky, up across the back of the middle finger, back around the pinky, and across the back of my hand. Hopefully the spindle is not blocking your view too much. So I'm just going to keep doing this in the same way. I'll do this a bit slowly actually so you can see it, and I'll speed it up later on. When I'm doing it not in front of a camera, I don't sort of use so much movement. I will just move my hand like so. So once you get used to it, you can do that, but as I say, try not to get too tight. So I'm going to wrap all of this spindle around my hand and then show you what to do when I get to the end. If you ever want to work out which way around your hand you need to go, look at where the yarn is coming from. So in this case, it's coming across the back and towards the little finger, so I know it's got to go up that way and around the middle finger, then around the back, up around the thumb and back again. As I say, I am doing this in stages just because I've got 100 grams on my spindle. If I had a smaller amount, I would probably do it all in one go. But because I don't want to get too tight around my middle finger so that my hand gets stuck, I am doing just wrapping a bit and then taking off my finger, wrapping a bit, taking off my finger, which is not a bad way to start. You just need to keep track of which direction you are wrapping your yarn in so that you don't then get tangled, because the whole point of the Andean bracelet is to stop your yarn tangling whilst you are plying it. I think I've done quite well on the weight of this single, as it's taken me quite a while to wind it off, which means I've got a good amount of yardage there, which is fabulous. So the plan is to keep this consistent over a further 4 100-gram lumps of fibre in this same colourway, because I'm doing a sweater spin. But as a beginner, just do single skeins for now. Single skein is enough to make a hat or a cowl or a pair of gloves, or use in some weaving, or do some squares for a blanket. I mean, that would actually be pretty cool thinking about it. Lots of single skeins of hand spun knitted up into like a mitered square blanket or something. Might have to do that. Okay, we're on to the last little bit of fibre now on the spindle, and I've got the yarn coming around from behind my thumb, so I'm going to go from behind my thumb, around the middle finger, around the back, around the pinky, around the middle finger, around the back, around the thumb, around the pinky, around the middle finger, back, around the middle finger, and so on. So it's the same action. It's quite a repetitive action, so if you want to do it in smaller bits, do it in smaller bits. If you want to just spin up maybe 50 grams of singles and then Andean ply off it, that's always good, because this is obviously quite a long time. I've spent, it's about 40 minutes I've spent so far, getting everything out, getting everything sorted, getting set up, talking to you guys and doing this. I didn't start timing when I started winding, but yeah, it can take a bit of time when you've got more fibre. So if you are concerned about the repetitive action at all, do smaller bits. Nearly there. I'm just going to take this bit off my finger though, because I'm starting to get a bit tight. Sometimes I find that I need to bring the bracelet up a little bit to make it easier to get the finger out, which is fine because you can just slip it back down onto your wrist like a normal bracelet. There we go, so we're still there. See, I've got quite a bit of yardage, as you can see. We're coming from around the back of the thumb, so around the thumb, up through the middle finger, back down again, around the pinky, around the middle finger, around the back. I do find my sections get a bit smaller as I get towards the end, because obviously the bracelet itself is coming further up my wrist and onto my hand, so I've got less room for manoeuvre. Just going to move it down a bit. And I've still got that original end over my thumb. You've got to keep track of where that original thumb is, and the reason for that will become clear in a minute. Okay, so I'm just going to take the last bit off my finger, and then we're ready to start plying. Okay, so I have my single on my wrist, I have my spindle which is now empty, and I have the first bit that we spun up on the spindle here. This is the original bit that we attached to the spindle and then spun. I've got the other end tucked away on my thumb, so I'm going to pull that out and I'm going to match it up with the initial beginning fibre, and I'm going to make a little loop and hook my hook on that. Okay, now just like we did before, when we are plying, we are going to be spinning the yarn in the opposite direction to when we spun our single. So in my case, I'm going to be pushing my thumb away from me. What's going to happen is we're going to get the yarn pulled from inside our bracelet and outside our bracelet. That does mean we're going to need to manipulate our hand a little bit sometimes to get the yarn to come over, but that's okay. So I'm going to spin and let that twist come up into my singles. So I'll just get started and then I will show you how I progress. Once you've got your first bit plied, you can wrap that around the spindle shaft like you did before and then keep going. So once you've got started plying with your Andean Plying Bracelet, you're essentially just treating the yarn as if it was a centre pull ball, which just happens to be on your wrist, or as if you'd wind it off onto 2 bobbins. The actual plying process is exactly the same. So I'm going to keep plying this yarn and I will come back to you. So if you see, I'm actually using my finger and my thumb to control the singles coming towards the spindle. Make sure I've got plenty of twist going in. I'd rather have too much twist than not enough. If you don't have enough twist, your yarn's just going to fall apart. The yarn comes off my hand quite easily. I can encourage it along a little bit with my other hand at times. Sometimes I need to twist my wrist a little bit to get it to come out. Like that, there we go. That's fine, that's just the yarn snagging on itself as it comes out. So yes, it's just like plying a standard 2-ply off 2 bobbins. It's just that you're effectively using a centre pull ball off your wrist. You could in fact wind it off onto a centre pull ball if you wanted to. Anyway, this is obviously a bit more portable. You're not attached to a lazy Kate of any description. You can wander around with it, you can go out for a walk with the kids. You could potentially walk the dog, I suppose. I'm not sure why you would walk the dog and play at the same time, but you could if you wanted to. Go for a walk in the fields, if you happen to live near fields, that kind of thing. Whereas other plying methods are a little bit more constrained to one place. And obviously you are going to probably want to get all of your plying done in one go using this method as you are wearing the singles around your wrist, but if you really had to stop for whatever reason, you could slip the Andean Plying Bracelet off onto a bobbin type thing, like a tube from a loo roll or something, and store it on that until you're ready to carry on. You could even ply it off the bobbin if you wanted to as well. One of the main benefits of using this method of plying as opposed to plying off 2 bobbins is you don't have to worry about whether or not you've accurately split your fibre into 2 equally weighted bobbins, or equal yardage rather, because you are plying starting with the 2 ends together and you're going to end up in the middle of your single. So you are going to use the full yardage of whatever you have spun up by using an Andean Plying Bracelet. So from a sort of yarn efficiency point of view, it's pretty good. Now obviously when you're doing 100 grams of this at a time, it does take a bit of time. So you might want to put film on, binge something on Netflix, listen to an audiobook, whatever floats your boat, in order to get it done. I'm obviously quite a way through at the minute, and I'm just applying reasonable length and then winding it onto the spindle before I go again. Maybe a little bit of fluff stuck to my lips. The joy of working with fibre. You'll notice as well as you're going that once you've got a bit of spin in, I'll show you this in a second, once you've got a bit of spin in, as soon as you introduce more singles to the plying, just as when you add more fibre and you're spinning a single, the twist does like to carry up. So if I put some twist in here, okay, I'm going to stop the spindle there. I'll actually park it between my knees, and hopefully you'll be able to see this. Okay, so I'm going to put my finger there to hold the twist where it is, and when I release my finger, there we go, the twist has just travelled up. So the more twist you've got, the further up it's going to travel. It does exactly the same thing with fibre supply when you're spinning singles. As soon as you release the twist, it is going to shoot up your fibre. That's why you need to be so careful when you're drafting to make sure that you are not really introducing twist into your fibre supply. Because once you've got twist in your fibre supply, it's very hard to draft. Not so much of an issue with plying because you've already spun the singles. So I've moved my laptop over to my right hand side, so I'm looking up to the side a little bit just to make sure that you are actually looking at something and not like up my nostrils or something. You don't want to do that. I'll actually show you what I've got on my wrist. You're going to be able to see some areas where the yarn is over twisted. If I put that there, so if you can see all these little squirrely bits hopping up and down, that's where the yarn is sort of plying back on itself. So it's got really good bits of twist in there at those points, to the point of almost over twisted, which is good because when we're applying, we're twisting in the other direction, which means it's going to take out some of the twist. So you do want to sort of err on the side of over twisted for most of the yarns, well, in my opinion anyway. That may change as I start doing a wider variety of yarn types, but for the yarns I'm looking for, a bit of over twist is a good thing because the plying will balance it out. If it's under twisted and you are plying in the opposite direction, it's just going to fall apart because you're going to take out what little twist is there. So certainly when you're starting out, err on the side of over twisting. Okay, so one of my strands has just got a little bit overexcited by its over twist. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it between the broken bit between where it's come from and the other ply and carry on. And as it twists around, it will hold that ply in place. Just like when you're spinning your singles, you can reconnect the fibre. It's exactly the same when you're plying. You can just slot your ply back in, and as you twist, it's going to get held in place. So there we go, it's already being held in place there, and as I put more twist in, that's going to make it firmer. So just on to the last little bit now. It won't be long before the whole skein is plied. Of course, once it's plied, I will be leaving it to rest a little bit before taking it off on a niddy noddy and scaling it up, ready to soak and set the twist. Okay, so we're nearly done. We've got just this last little bit to put on. It's already plied up. You can see I've got a little loop from the end of the single on my finger. So I'm just going to wind that on. Now I could put that loop over the hook, which is probably what I am going to do, just to hold the end of it, but it will also just ply in itself and let the twist go up. I'm just going to pop it on there because I don't need to worry about knotting it. So now there's my yarn. It looks to me like it's going to be around about a sport-ish weight, but once I've set the twist and let it dry, then I will properly measure it using my wraps per inch gauge. Andean. So there we are, we finished plying using the Andean Plying Bracelet. I'm going to let that rest overnight, and then I will be winding it off onto a niddy noddy ready to soak to set the twist, at which point I will measure the weight of the yarn using my wraps per inch tool, which gives you an estimate. I mean, until you've actually knitted it up and seen what gauge you get, you can't really say for 100%, but you can get a pretty good idea of the sort of range that it's in. My gut feeling at the moment is that it's going to be around about a sport-ish, maybe DK weight, which is fine. I've got enough fibre to produce a sweater quantity in that weight, which is what I'm aiming for, so that's great. So there we go. Happy spindling!